Just testing if anyone can hear me. Thank you.
It's not a good drought. Yeah, right. Good way.
Take your seats.
It's not the best depending on, but it comes down like,
I don't know why.
you don't even use that.
Anything that I wasn't on?
No problem.
Okay.
And it just needs to
Jenna, are you good with roll call? You check for attendance?
I've been watching it.
Okay, we have everybody.
Yes,
Okay, great. And are we unmuted?
we are unmuted.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna check sound. Hi, Director Gordon. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Good to see you. Okay, so we have an election. And let me borrow this for a minute. I know I've done this a few times before. I am going to call for nominations from the floor. Thank you, Stuart. It's like, oh my God.
On the holidays, we're.
I'm back. Nominations from the floor. How about?
I will nominate my next door neighbor.
That'd be McFadden.
That would be Director Pat.
Do you accept McFadden?
I do.
Thank you. Calling for a second time. Is there nominations? I'm just looking at the screen. Anyone on the screen, just unmute if you have a nomination.
I think that I had her hand up, but it was, oh, gosh.
Okay.
I just saw it there.
And calling for a third time, are there any nominations from the floor? All right then.
Bye, neighbor.
Yeah, I didn't mean for you to move.
I declare McFadden the chair of this committee. There you go. Thank you. Sometimes I don't know what to do.
Do you want that?
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
All right. Second, everyone. Thank you. I think Walter just doesn't want me to sit beside him, so it's fine. Thank you all. Okay, let's move on to our agenda. Traditional land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and respect Indigenous peoples with whose traditional lands we are meeting today. Adoption of the agenda. Seconder, great. Any discussion?
Through the chair.
Yep.
Do we have an addition to the agenda?
Yeah, we do, through the chair, we have an addition about the KIJHL.
Okay. We'll put it under 7.86 then.
We generally need a 2/3 vote for that.
Or probably even if it's from staff. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no problem. We can vote on that. Okay, I will call for a vote to add that as a late agenda item. All those in favor? Great. Any opposed? Not seeing any. Great. We'll put it at 7.6. Anything else before we adopt the agenda, the amended agenda? Not seeing any. All right. All those in favor of adoption of the agenda? Great. And none opposed. We are moving on. Receipt of the minutes. Any discussion on the minutes? Not seeing any. And we have no delegations. We move over to staff report 7.1, community services fees and charges schedule 2026. Over to staff.
Thank you, through the chair, I'm just going to share my screen to walk you through a presentation of the report that you have in your agenda package. I hope it looks like everybody should be able to see it. All right, now, so the presentation is a summary of what's in your agenda package. It's sort of easier to walk through it this way. So this is the time of year every year that we bring forward information about the fees and charges being proposed for the upcoming year. So this particular document that you're seeing in front of you today would come into effect on September the 8th. So there's from today, if approved, we'll go to the board, and then staff start developing a lot of our ICE contracts in particular and some room bookings going into the fall, which is why we bring it forward to you in the spring each year. So just for information generally, I'm sure much of this you could repeat for me, but this is a bit of a history of the fees and charges process to date. So back in 2019, the actual policy was adopted. That policy sits on the RDCK website. It is there forever until we take it off, but it is there for people's reference should they ever wish to look at it. In 2021, the board approved admission rates, so that's one of the fee schedule areas within the policy, basically to have those fees aligned with the policy in 2021. That same process went to the pool side of things in 2022, followed by rental fees of facilities in 2023. In 2024, the All Recreation Committee recommended a process to bring rental fees for nonprofit use of arenas in line with the policy, which was approved by the board back in 2024. Last year, our former general manager did go through the process that's part of the policy where we, I'll call it a recalibration of fees, and basically an opportunity to cross-check that the fees still make sense based on the policy direction. And so there were minor changes made. You may recall a couple of fees actually reduced, a couple of fees stayed exactly where they were. Others continued to go on their increase as per the policy to kind of start to bring them in line with our target rates. And then that brings us to today, which is basically to tell you that this work is a reflection of that work over time and just continues the process to date. So there's no changes from how that's all unfolded to this point. In the fees and sorry.
No, go for it. Do you want the whole do you want to do your whole presentation and take questions?
I can do whatever the chair wishes.
Let's do the whole presentation and then we'll take questions. Yeah.
Perfect. So this particular diagram, just for reference, is actually in the fees and charges policy. It does highlight the process that we follow every year. The diagram is there. I know you can't read it, but if you did want to look at it, it is in the policy just for reference. So I'm going to walk through kind of the three main categories that the fees and charges document deals with. So the first one is admissions and memberships. So in the policy, it talks about the percentages that the user is expected to pay compared to what the level of subsidization is through taxation to support the services that we offer. So back in the day when those target rates were established, it identified that for children or preschool age children, which is under the age of 6, they come into the facility when it comes to general admissions or memberships at a zero cost, where obviously the cost to provide the service is being subsidized 100%. For youth, that relationship is slightly different, where 25% of that target cost is being charged to the user, 75% is being recovered through subsidization. For adults, that relationship is 50% on each side. And then for golden guests, it reverts similar to like the preschool and children's side, where golden guests, which Tia can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe at 75 years of age and older, pay no fees to come in under admissions or memberships, and then it's subsidized 100%. And then a family unit, which is made up of at least one adult and up to 3 children, I believe. Again, Tia can correct me in her report. But basically that fee, when people come in under a family rate, was simply calculated at twice the adult rate. So making it that children coming in under the family rate or deemed children were coming in for free or at no cost. So when it comes to admissions and memberships, you'll probably recall that we have various programs that people can participate in. So we have something called, many people refer to it as the punch pass, which is the 10-time pass, where in actual fact, what you're getting for that is one of those 10 admissions for free at the cost that you're paying, so it's a 90% rate based on the cost of what a single admission would be per visit. So you can see that as we sort of work through it, you can start to see how that original calculation from the previous slide starts to impact these fees over time. So for example, like youth, obviously, if they're paying a little bit more upfront and getting a per session rate that's a little bit cheaper than if you paid a single admission each time, the percentage that they're paying starts to reduce. And so that's same principle applies to 1 month passes, 3 month passes, and 6 month passes. And the way our system is currently set up is that the more you pay in advance, the more value you are getting per visit, or the least amount of money you're paying on a per visit basis. And it's simply showing you how that calculation plays out, and also where it starts to kind of err on the side of the benefit to the user. If they're a frequent user, there are certain passes that are more beneficial to them financially than others. And that system has been in place for a very long time. So when it comes to rental fees, this percentage of user pay and subsidization changes slightly. So for youth recreation, it's a user pay of 50% and subsidized 50%. Adult recreation, that's 75% and 25%. For fundraising or nonprofit high profile events, that is where the user's paying 100%, excuse me, of the fee, and it's not subsidized. And then commercial sits at 125%. So when we look at all of the fees within the schedule, and it is attached as an addendum to, or an appendix to your agenda, this is summarizing what has changed within the fees, just for ease of reference. So the guiding principles that we applied this year were the same that have been applied in the past. So the first one is we look at the BC CPI average increase as reported in February of the year that we're actually applying those fees. So that would have been just February of 2026. And that percent was sitting at 1.8% at that time. As we just talked about, the target rates were established back in this time in 2025. So we knew what those target rates were supposed to be. And in many cases, many of our fees were sitting at that. So some of those fees have simply increased by CPI, where other fees were still catching up. Arenas would be one of those where they're still considerably lower than the target rates that would have been reported back in 2025. So there's a strategy on how to sort of escalate those fees differently than CPI. Where we were in that escalation, there were parameters that were applied that were approved back, I believe it was in 2024, where if we were increasing those to escalate them, it was either 5% plus CPI or a total of 10%. Of whichever was greater. So if CPI was really high, we might have held that at 10%. If CPI is lower, like it is this year, the one that was greater, which was the 10%, was applied to those targeted fees for arenas. And then in aquatics, Creston was one that was trying to catch up over time. And actually the fees this year, with the exception, and I believe I highlighted on another slide, with the exception of 2 fees that are actually rarely charged, Creston will now, after this fee increase, be caught up in aquatics. And I think that was on target to what was a 3-year plan to bring Creston up to the same level as other aquatic fees in the district. So the chart on the table sort of highlights, if you were to walk through the actual appendix, what those fee increases start to look like. So across the admissions and memberships, you would see a 1.8% increase. For aquatic rentals in Nelson and Castlegar, you see a 1.8% increase. For aquatic rentals for commercial, I caught a correction that needed to be applied. Commercial was only escalated by 20% from that 100% rate. If you can remember back to that previous slide. So I added that extra 5% in this year. So that's why that big fee is different. For aquatic rentals in Creston and Selmo, it ranged between 1.8 and up to 10%. And that was because in some cases, some of those fees were already caught up, and in other cases they weren't. And so it varied across the schedule. For room rentals, across all of the schedules, it was 1.8%. For arenas, it continued to sit at 10% across all of the arena, areas, and they're broken out by facility. Dry floor and fields continue to be at 1.8%. So I just highlighted some other noted changes. Some of these, I'm sure you'll recall from previous all-rec discussions. The first ones in particular related to the arena, this is being brought forward from the conversations in October. So in the schedule for arenas in Castlegar, there was not an adult non-prime rate. I think it was an error that was just missed over time, so that has been added to be in alignment with all other arena rates for that particular fee category. Back in October, we talked about that implementation of spring, summer, and core operating seasons for arenas. So we put a clause in the actual arena schedule that talks about what happens in those core seasons, and then there's the actual schedule in the appendix that identifies how those core seasons are defined. And so it basically is saying that in the shoulder seasons, so spring and summer, prime fees apply across all fees regardless of the time of day, but then also specifies what our core operating season is for arenas. And then we've had a fair number of requests for concourse rates for, in particular, Nelson. The other two arenas, so that's like where you could rent a portion of the concourse that's separate from the ice rental. And so those fees have been added in specific to Nelson. The other two facilities are not well suited for that rental rate, and we haven't had any requests to this point in time. So we did not include them at this point, but that was an addition into that fee schedule. I mentioned the one correction we made for aquatics related to the commercial rental rates. And then any other fees that do not sit within this schedule would also sit at that 1.8% increase. So that would be for things like chair rental or some kind of equipment piece that we have extra fees for, depending on what the needs of the rental might be. And so staff look for that direction to know what to increase those fees by, and the standard has been by CPI. And that concludes that report.
Great, Director Jackson.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I actually had two questions that are separate. So the first one, the schedule has large and smaller facilities on it, lots of breakdown. I'm wondering, in future updates, we don't own the Crawford Bay Fitness Center, but now we manage it. And sites like that going to be added to the schedule, and they're then added with some of the payment options maybe be allowed there as well, instead of having a monthly or 3 month or whatever, maybe you get a FOB that allow 10 uses, that kind of thing. Is that part of the plan for the next schedule update?
Through the chair, so New Denver would also fall into that same category, and Crawford Bay Fitness Center. So I'm just assuming everyone is familiar with those facilities. So these are, I'll call them satellite fitness facilities that we operate and have always fallen under these, well, in particular New Denver, because Crawford Bay is new, fallen under a completely different fee schedule. I think until we have those conversations with commissions, the way they operate and are administrated are so different than what this does. It would be hard to directly apply some of like our standard fees to those. It is definitely going to be a conversation at the Rec 9 Commission at figuring out how that looks over time. So in short, yes, it could be. I'm just not sure when.
Okay, and then could I ask a second question while I have the floor? So it's a little different. I appreciate you're trying to get, catching up with fees to some sort of uniform level rates across the RD for most. The one fee that stands out the most as being very different, depending which large facility you're at, is the upper ice rentals. Representative Games, and it ranges from Nelson at $172 to Castlegar at $648, which they'll sort that out themselves. But my question, Preston, reads as per contract. How would the public see that number? Can or shouldn't the public see that number?
Through the chair, it's a good question. I don't know. So in those cases where it's under a contract, which are currently expiring or have expired, that Craig, will talk about possibly as part of that KIJHL conversation. Those, because they're a negotiated contract, they would never show up in here. How that would show up to the public, I guess is a question, I'm not sure. The Castlegar one, the fee for, I think there was the one I'm guessing maybe
Rep.
looking at.
Replicants.
Yeah, Representative Gaines in Castlegar. Craig might know the history of that more, but,
Yeah, through the chair, the variation there that, all three agreements were negotiated at different locations for different committees and commissions, and so they had slightly different terms. The Nelson is on a per hour basis, Preston is on a per game basis, Castlegar is on a per game basis, and Preston is on an hourly basis. It's a lower rate, but there's a minimum number of hours put to a game. So we have discussed at this committee, when we did a comparison of the three teams, three franchises, contracts, so that number was represented. But, I think the only other time we would see that is when we brought it to the Crescent Valley Services Committee or to this committee in the future. We're gonna look at aligning them as far as making that a publicly known number. It's within range of the other two, it's just not articulated in this report.
I think it's important eventually that it's visible to the public. Thanks.
Thanks. Director David.
Oh, thank you, Chair. And congrats on your acclamation. The comment, and I can't resist doing this. So when Trish mentioned that you have the birth to a certain age, and then the golden age, you revert back to the childhood. I like to think it's a golden age dividend, not a reversion back to infancy. So just thought I'd mention that. And my question then to the chair, to Trish is we did this in 2019, and it wasn't even this board that did the really deep dive into what our policies for fees and charges should be. That was a massive undertaking. And did we build in sort of when we would be reviewing the fees and charges policy, or are we just finally implementing it? Because I think the work we did in 2019 and the tweaking that happened, we are just now getting to the point where we're implementing this across most of our facilities, with the exceptions of the ones that just have been mentioned. So did we build in a review period kind of timeline? And so if a new board coming on stream, maybe they could review the fees and charges policy, or are we just good with where we are at right now? Through the chair.
Through the chair, so to answer Director Davidoff's question, there's maybe two things. So to your first part about when or how the policy itself will be reviewed. I would agree with you that it's still in the process of being implemented and understood. The first kind of review that, to my knowledge, that would have happened would have been last year, where that recalibration occurred. And that proved to be it proved to be very telling of how well the policy was being implemented and how well it was working. And so because there were no major changes to it, I would suggest that it probably doesn't warrant a review as of yet. I think we might need to get through at least one more 3-year review calibration period to really test that out. And so the next calibration period, and I believe it states it in the policy, is to occur every 3 years. So that would be in this time in 2028 would be when that would next come back to this committee first for consideration. And that might give us a better, be more telling maybe as to how that continues to work and function for us.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Supplemental.
Yep.
Yeah, and it is good to see something that's been worked on for a very long time actually working, and that takes a lot of work, a lot of staff work as well. So thank you very much for that. Could we make an amendment to the Golden Age rate and call it a golden age dividend? It's return on what you've invested in? Henny says no.
Well, we'll get staff to do a report on that.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Okay, Director Lockwood.
Thank you. I have a few questions because Salmo is unique to the whole thing because our facilities are separate, our pool and our fitness sessions are separate.
Mhm.
So bear with me. When we talk about punch passes and we're talking about punch passes for, I walk into Nelson and I can get a punch pass and I can use all the facilities. How does that work in Salmo?
I'm gonna actually defer that to Tia, because I think Tia could probably talk a little bit more about the pass fees. She might even have it more readily available on her computer than I do. Sorry, Tia, to put you on the spot.
Through the chair, that's no problem, Trisha. So with Salmo, the fees are reduced they're reduced from what you would see in the other facilities, knowing that there are less amenities available for use. So anytime that somebody wants to use the fitness center, they can use the gymnasium for activities as long as the gymnasium is available based on their schedule. As for the pool, as you know, is separate and is run as by donation only, as far as I know, and I don't know whether or not that's when that conversation is going to come up as to whether or not there is going to be a fee structure set to it or not. But the reduced cost is because of the less amenities that are available.
So I thought we had already had a discussion that we weren't gonna do donations this year going in in the fall. I thought that was set, so that's why it was a little bit confusing to me. So I'm glad that you've brought that up because we'll make sure that comes up at our meeting. Okay, and then I'm gonna go into, if I may, through the chair, is how does, I'm gonna use a nonprofit that is wanting to rent the Salmo pool, which is away from all the other stuff, and have it open to the public. What does that cost? Cause I don't see it in all of the papers that you guys have done as reports, but I can't figure it out.
Yeah, so through the chair, that type of arrangement, which the way I'm interpreting what you're suggesting is somebody wants to provide an opportunity to the community to come for a free swim on a given day and sponsor that particular activity. So that would fall to our sponsorship policy. So in the sponsorship policy, it talks about how we value what the cost of that service actually is, which would then create the fee for that particular group that wanted to donate. So it talks about the factors that are included. So it considers the additional staff time that might be required. It considers the rate of the pool rental. It considers some advertising or communication costs that we might have. And all of those things add up to then determine what that fee actually is. So it's not something that is cookie cutter. So it's different in Castlegar than even sometimes in Nelson and sometimes in Creston, and would be different again in Salmo, just by the nature of the facility and whether it could be occupancy, the number of staff that we need to bring in to manage a free activity. So there's a host of things that would make it outside of this particular schedule. We could certainly provide that calculation to you so that you would know, if somebody wanted to do a 2-hour free swim in Salmo, what that would be. We could certainly provide you with that information.
That would be wonderful, because I've had people ask, so if I wanted to rent the pool for 2 hours, they use 2 hours, what would it cost me per hour? And I'm like, when this all came out, I'm like, we have a meeting coming up and it's fees and schedules. I'll figure it out. And then I couldn't get back to him because I couldn't get it. So I would love that. Thank you.
Director Vandenberg.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm going to the Appendix A, page 7, and I just want to explore that. It's the rental types and my question would pertain to all of them: field rentals, the courts, and the gazebo. And if I could focus in on pickleball, because I know a little bit about that, and the adult recreation fee of $12.22 per hour, that's for regular private community events, post-secondary school groups. Now, that would assume that anytime you want to use the pickleball court, you would have to go to and arrange to pay your fee. But the reality is that the public is using the courts freely. And I would think that it must be, these fees are more regarded as event bookings. A group of people want to use the facility and that sort of thing. They then would book it and pay that fee. Is that how one would understand that? Particularly, and secondly, if you have an event booking and you want to reserve a court, and the fee that you pay at $12.22 per hour, does that include, and in the case of the pickleball, all 4 courts? Or is that just 1 court? So I just clarity around that because it's quite a topic in Creston.
So through the chair, to the first part of your question, if you think of courts similar to fields where if your activity requires exclusivity to that space, or you want to be assured that that space is going to be available to you, meaning no other person could be on it, or you would have the, quote unquote authority to tell people to leave that space because you have a rental, that's what that fee applies to. And it also, when applying that fee, requires you to go through and have your facility contract in place, your appropriate insurance, and all the other things that would go with rental of any of our spaces. But yes, that would be applied to that exclusivity space. But if you're just going and the space happens to be available and you're just a public person wanting to, whether it's kick a ball around on a soccer field or play pickleball or tennis, you're welcome to do so unless it happened to be booked. So that's the first part of that question. The second part, whether it would apply on a per court basis. And actually, that's a good point, and we could clarify that in the schedule to make it understood that it didn't mean the whole. If there was like I'm thinking of Castlegar, I think there's like 3 or 4 courts there, or in Creston, I think there were 4, that it would be on a per court basis. And so, if that answers your question, but in my opinion, I think you've raised a good point. It's not clear in here, and we could add that to the schedule, if you wish.
Thank you, and I think it will come up, and so it probably save you a little bit of time and effort to put that note in there, and I appreciate your answers.
Director Noel.
Through the chair, just wondering if staff have had any further feedback on our choice of 75 years of age for the golden age age.
Through the chair, many people would like it to be lower than that. There are many people that would like the seniors rate to come back. There's a host of conversations around that age category, but it usually is connected to why we don't have a seniors rate for service. And so, but often when you can have that opportunity to sit down and talk to people and explain to them how that works and why, they're modestly more receptive to it, but it is kind of it's a thing. There's people, we have challenges right now in, like, Crawford Bay has a different practice in place than New Denver, I believe, is aligned. I'd have to double check on that, but in part because we're inheriting some practices and that shift will be challenging because it is in Crawford Bay substantially different than 75 years of age for that complimentary admission.
A supplement. Yeah, so building on what Director Davidoff started, like when we went through this process, that we did have a conversation around this and felt, well, everyone's an adult until 75, and then we'll set this separate thing up rather than have it as seniors rate. We my recollection is that we kind of thought, let's just see how this goes. Like, we were pretty committed to it, like the logic was reasonable. I remember there was talk of, well, maybe seniors, have as much money as adults, and family people are stressed as well. So I don't know if we should be reflecting on that, because I've had some feedback, not a lot lately, to be honest, but I have had feedback and I've been thinking about it, and I see it in so many places that there is a seniors rate at 65. So I didn't want to, when we're talking about this, not raise it and see if other directors started rethinking about it or have been thinking about it, or think we should revisit that mini portion of our policy. So it's not, I had the initial question about feedback, and then the rest was editorializing, so. And it doesn't affect me personally, just to be clear, so not self-interest motivated, or pretty soon, at your 45.
It's great. Okay, Director Hanegraaff, just a reminder, make sure you put your name in chat. I can't always see all the pictures, but I did see your hand this time.
Okay, sorry about that, thanks. I say leave it alone. I've, it used to be the seniors rate was 60 and the golden guest was 80. And that got eliminated. And now it's 75 per golden guest and no more seniors rate. I think most people are done complaining about it, from what I can gather when I'm at the complex in Castlegar. To change it now, I think would just create a whole new set of complaints. I think people are they've accepted that this is how it is. So I say it's not broke, so let's not try to fix it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else, so we do have a motion in our agenda. Does someone want to move that motion? Yeah, okay, you've got a mover and we have a seconder. Great, seconder. Any further discussion? Dr. Jackman, you have further?
Yeah, I was gonna add the per court, we're gonna say the schedule as amended, and that'll give you way to add per court or whatever clarification that Director Vandenberg brought up.
Sure, are you okay with that friendly amendment? Director, Woodward, I'm gonna call you Weatherhead, I knew it wasn't right, it's coming up.
Yes.
Okay, seconder's okay with that friendly amendment? Yeah.
Other than
Yeah,
that there's nothing in here for, can fees be added to it? Because that was the intention of Samuel having an actual payment and it's not in here, so how does that get added after the fact?
we can make we can amend the policy,
Okay.
I would think at any time,
I'm
once
good
you
with
guys have that
everything then.
discussion, for sure.
Thanks.
Okay, so you got that friendly amendment? Great, okay, any other discussion on that? All those in favor? Great, any opposed?
Sure, one clarification. So just in terms of, you don't need to add the amendment to the motion, you're just making the motion that as amended. So the amendment's done in the actual document, but the motion doesn't need the noted change.
Okay, sure, I thought that from the table was a request to make sure that it got captured in the motion, because it wasn't originally in the appendix, but that's fine.
Yeah, generally it's just, you're just amending the policy and then what you're actually amending is done in the, in the fees and charges.
Okay, moving on to 7.2. And financial access and inclusion policy, over to staff.
This will hopefully share that successfully. Okay, perfect. So similar to before, I find it easier to walk through these reports through PowerPoints. I hope that works for everyone. So back in, maybe just before I jump to this, so back when the changes were made to the financial access and inclusion policy, the first implementation of that was in January of 2025. Then in June of 2025 was when the first full renewal of people in the leisure access program started to occur. In I think it was July of 2025, we made some minor policy adjustments to give some administrative freedom to staff to support people doing in the leisure access program, that if they provide the right verification documents, that we could give them their full allotment of funding upfront so that they could then use it and not have to have that administrative burden of coming back to see us. We are now almost a full year into this whole process and have spent the last 10 months evaluating and monitoring and collecting feedback on this process. Stuart, can I interrupt you for one? I see hands at the door and he's just trying to get in. Yeah. Sorry. And so in that time, we have been monitoring that process and we wanted to provide you with some information on that and just sort of capture some of the conversation from a year ago and determine what, if anything, we thought should change going forward. And so this is a summary of all of that information. So the first thing we wanted to share, similar to what you have seen for the last several All-Rec meetings, information on the usage data of the program. So I won't go into all of the details, it's in the report, but you can see that it is a well-used service. We have 1,072 unique patrons. We have upwards of almost $51,300-ish being utilized by people in the program. And we have allocated a large percentage of funding, but in actual fact, there's not, it's probably about 40% or so that's actually getting utilized. And it's interesting to see, to me, what's interesting to see is the number of youth participants. So we have 339 or 32% of our users are youth and 733 of them are adults. And so what's interesting about that is previous to this year, before we enhanced the program, we did not have the same number of youth actually participating in this service. And what we're seeing is they're actually taking advantage of things like swimming lessons, camp, other services that previously were not part of the program. This time last year, or it might have been in June last year, one of the questions was around that administration of, well, do we have the number right? Is the amount of subsidy we're providing correct? And so you can see that in the youth side, there's 19 people that have exhausted all of their available subsidy, where on the adult side, there's 223 people that exhausted all of their subsidy. And so of the full picture of usage, it's pretty good. We're feeling pretty good about those numbers. There is some nuance that I'll share as we kind of walk through the report, but generally speaking, this should look very similar to what you've seen before. The second chart on that is talking about that kind of usage information. So you can see where for youth, we're having 139 participants in registered programs. And as compared to say drop-in services or memberships, you know, you've got 362 or 157 on the youth side, but previous that 139 participants in programs would not have been there previously. So we're just glad to see it being used in the way we intended. So some additional information is 10% or almost 11% activated more than one subsidy amount. So what that means is if that initial allotment of, if you're an adult, $100 was applied, 117 people came back and asked for at least one additional subsidy, if not more. 104 applicants received that second subsidy, 10 received 3 subsidies, and 2 received more than 3. So part of the administrative change that we made back in July was that senior staff were given the authority to say if there are people that clearly highly benefit from coming to our services and that subsidy amount is just not meeting their needs, that people like myself, the former general manager, and Craig were able to say, yes, we can approve additional subsidy. And there was that concern of, well, is this going to create an administrative burden for staff? And I hope by the numbers, you can see that it really did not. That did not pan out. And it did give some opportunity for people to access more funds to support their regular usage of facilities. 36% have had no use of their subsidy at all. So I should go back to my comment before. So that means 36% of people applied and never actually used their subsidy at all. Part of our investigation, maybe going into this next year, is to understand why that's happening. And maybe there's something we're missing that we want to explore, but that's to me an interesting number. The escalating edge cases, so those are those things that sit on the fringe that are kind of outside of the direct practices or procedures that we have in place that require additional approval. Those are definitely there, but the actual need from senior managers was minimal. However, the nuances of those are actually quite significant. And it's very interesting. We have I think there's a slide about it where we talk a little bit about just what those types of, or sorry, it's in the report, about what the different types of edge cases are that exist, and trying to not have to dive into people's personal worlds, but figure out a way to support them is probably that balance that we're always trying to strike. But that escalation of those edge cases is certainly something that we're monitoring and trying to figure out how we can not have to get involved, but actually just manage that effectively for people. I believe from what we're seeing so far that there's no reason to change the value of the subsidies we're providing. I think we should keep it for at least one more year and maintain that $200 allotment for adults, or a total of $200 allotment with that ability to get more if needed. And that $300 amount for youth with that same caveat of saying, if needed, we'll engage in those conversations. Maybe a year from now, that conversation will look different, but I do recall Director Jackman's comment to say, one of the things to evaluate was to determine, is that number right? And do we have it right? As I think it's, with a bit more time, we might want to come back to it, but it, to me, was a portion of our evaluation. So this is meant to highlight some of the things that we have collected as feedback over time. So some of the observations, and I'll quickly walk through these in the report, they dive into these in a little bit more detail. But some of the observations are family transactions remain one of the largest operational pressures. And in part because of how this system has to get set up in the program or in our software, is that if I am a parent of 3 children, the actual subsidy is applied to us as individuals, which then means that if all of us are coming in under a transaction and want to use our subsidies, each of those is an individual transaction, which for some people, and in particular, probably people in financial need, if you're being charged by the transaction of your bank for use of your debit card or however that works, can cause a lot of problems, and it also causes a lot of delays at the front counter. The other challenge with it, it kind of goes into this next piece where adult subsidies are often carrying family admissions, is that right now, the way the system works is that it defaults to the family or to the adult in the group paying the family admission as to whose subsidy is charged. So it doesn't take it from the child, it takes it from the adult. One of the things in the mitigation is that we're going to adjust that in June, but we're going to monitor that because part of that concern is we want to make sure that the subsidy is available for children. That was a big component of this, and that they have access to it. So we're just trying to figure out how best to manage that over time. Our current structure, and that's largely through our membership. So if you think back to the piece we just talked about with fees and charges, disadvantages month-to-month users. And so because our system is set up that the more you pay up front, the higher level the discount is for people in financial need. That means they're using more of their subsidy up front because typically those individuals are unable or don't have the resources to pay that initial upfront cost, even with their subsidy applied. And so in essence, they're technically paying more on a per session basis, if that makes sense. So it is something that we're monitoring, but I think with that administrative freedom to manage the subsidy amount is probably our best choice right now. But you'll see in the recommended staff direction that we might be able to figure out an alternate way to manage that over time. Patron confusion around how the subsidy works. It is a change. We know that it takes people time to sort of learn and how to figure out how to use this. Our staff spend a lot of time at the front counter and through phone calls and emails helping people understand this program. Sarah, through our communications efforts, will be continuing to educate the public on this, and in particular, as we head into our renewal season, that will be a key component of us is taking some of these learnings and trying to spin that into communication efforts going forward. And as previously mentioned, those edge cases are growing. You may find it of interest to just see what some of those edge cases are in the report, because they're quite unique that can come up, and it just gives you such a small little window of opportunity to appreciate just what some people, what challenges some people might be facing in our communities. So overall, our proposed direction, so is largely not to really change too much, but to direct staff to do a feasibility a study on whether we can actually add something called an account level subsidy or something along those lines to support the leisure access program. So off the top, I can envision that there's probably some pros and cons to that discussion, but we need to really look at the whole system and figure out if it's even feasible at this point, and if you want to see us do this. But some of the pros would be those administrative transactions would be significantly more efficient. Patrons would certainly feel heard. This has been a primary concern that they've raised with us since the inception of these changes. And to patrons, this adjustment in their minds makes logical sense. They see it as something that would be beneficial, at least from the feedback we've heard. Some of the cons and sort of pieces that we want to figure out if there's a way to mitigate them might be that one person in the family could dominate that use of that subsidy. So if I, as the adult, went, oh, I love to go to the fitness center and the pool, and I'm gonna occupy all that for my 6-month pass and not have anything now directed to their children or other people in their family, that could be a risk of an account level subsidy program. Account level subsidies would vary, so that amount would probably be dependent on how many people are in the family. So it would be a constant other level of administration of trying to figure out what that math is and making it different, and people maybe not understanding how that applies. And I'm not sure at this point, until we actually kind of do the feasibility, we're not sure how that might impact our reporting, which has been a large component of wanting to make some of our administrative changes, was to provide you with better reporting and us better reporting information to make decisions. So we do think, which is why we're requesting that direction, we do think that it's worth spending time to look at that account level subsidy to see if it can solve some of our challenges. And I believe that's it.
Great. Director David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for that report, Trish. The work we did with you and Kelly and Joe, I think that was one of the first big projects that you took on for us in the RD, and your guidance was really valuable to all of us, and here we are with another program that's working well. I do have a question about, we have so much data here, and yet in some other areas, when it comes to recreation, we don't have access to, like, this is quite granular in terms of what we're doing, and now we're looking even at looking at account level subsidy option, which I support. But the key thing is, how are we getting all this data? Is that because of the application forms that come in, where we don't have, other data in recreation, because the software program won't allow us to extract it? So through the chair, that's my first question.
Sounds like you already know the answer. Over to staff.
Yeah, so through the chair, you're exactly right, and Tia can chime in as well. She may also have something to add. So because people have to apply to the program, it's like that we're then able to query information based on that application, as opposed to an individual who doesn't have to apply to a program and might participate in 5 or 6 different programs and have memberships and do other activities. This is very targeted to one program. It would be like evaluating one type of swimming lesson that we can literally, it's almost that we're able to dig into it because it is that specific, that without the application, none of the other information matters, because it's all queried through them being an eligible person or family to the leisure access program.
Supplemental, Chair?
Yep.
So, but when someone applies, like, to do an activity, in essence, they are submitting an application and providing relevant data about, you know, name, address, like all kinds of stuff, when they register for any of our programs. Is that correct, or am I wrong there?
Through the chair, maybe I'll just see if Tia, I was gonna answer it one way, but maybe I'll just see if Tia has something to add, Director Davidoff.
Tia?
Yeah, through the chair, thanks. With the Leisure Access Program, this is one program. So if you had asked us to find information on one program, we could certainly do that. When asking for information for 500 programs, 800 programs, that task becomes a lot more challenging and a lot more time intensive. So I think that's maybe the simplest answer I can provide in regards to why the data is so easily accessible. But you know, with this data, you know, we're not looking at locations other than the facilities that they've applied to, and that's it.
So, Chair, can I just summarize what I think I heard?
Yep.
So if, as directors, if we ask in the rec service or at the commission level, we ask for data on one particular activity, that is obtainable. We've been asking the wrong question all these years then. So given that, I think we got it. So I will make that motion that staff is recommending.
I have two other speakers on the list, so I'll just make sure that they're,
Yep.
get their question, then I'll come back to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Director Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. I have three other things here. First of all, I apologize for being late. Doctor's appointments are never when they're supposed to be.
No problem.
You know what I'm saying? And secondly, wonderful presentation. I appreciate it. And I like the breakdown and everything. And thirdly, this is great, but Cottonwood Lake is not an area I'd love it to be because it's within half a mile, but it's not an area.
We're not quite on the parks plan yet. We're still
No.
talking about,
Okay.
guys, but when we get to the parks plan, I will come back.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Director Loughlin.
Thank you. So through the chair, I just have a couple of things. So when you spoke about the number, like if you have a parent and 3 children. And I can understand that difficulty and that expense on that family of having to do it. Is there any way that this program can be that it's under, like the parent is 0-0, and then the one kid is 0-1, another one is 0-2, that it doesn't specify, so maybe 0-2 comes in more than 0-1, but it doesn't, it's still all going under one person, but they don't have to pay the same. Is there any way to do that in our system?
So through the chair, that's exactly the feasibility, what
Oh,
we're-
I see
Yeah,
what
so,
you're trying.
yeah, so as
okay.
opposed to it right now being, say the 2 adults and 2 kids, each person currently under the policy receives X amount of subsidy that's applied to those people versus taking that cumulative amount and putting it up here
Right.
and then allowing them to access it in whatever way the family chooses. The issue then just becomes, how do we ensure that that's going to the people and in the way that we want it to go based on the principles of what the Leisure Access Program is trying to achieve. So that,
Right.
and it's, so there's 2 things. One is, how do we manage it? And maybe even firstly, what can the system support in a way that would still build in the integrity that we want to the program? So yes,
Yeah.
but it's exactly what we're suggesting is the direction to staff for this coming year, that we start looking to
Right.
see what could we do there.
Okay, and supplemental, if I may, is when we're, now I have to find my thing. Cause I've just lost the question. Forget it. I'll talk to you later. It's just, it was right there and it's gone.
So,
Sorry.
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, Director Davidoff, if you would like to make the motion that's in the agenda?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Great, seconder. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? And none opposed. You can put that one in. Great. Okay, we're moving on. 7.3, community services punch class review. Back to you, Tricia.
Back to me, then you don't have to listen to me anymore, I promise.
Don't promise things that you can't keep, you never know.
Fair, okay. So this is, in follow-up. This is gonna like test your memory a little bit. So approximately, probably 18 months ago, if not closer to 2 years, this particular, okay, sorry, there you go, March 2024, 2 years ago. We brought a report to the All Rec Committee that had this particular, motion attached that ultimately got approved, by the board. And it was talking about, staff advancing their efforts to further develop and implement a replacement option to the 10 punch pass, and further that the committee support staff to develop the feasibility of moving away from term-based memberships to a monthly ongoing membership model. There was a very strategic reason as to why those were placed in the order that they were, because we actually can't move to a monthly membership model without dealing with the punch pass. So we've been focusing our efforts on the punch pass, and of course, that's taken a lot of time because we've had a few changes to it, and unfortunately, then we need time to pass in order to evaluate what's going on with punch passes. So this is our first effort in providing you information on what is happening with punch passes based on some administrative changes that we've made to support the collection of information about them. So before we did anything, or even recommended anything, we wanted to make sure we had some information to start with. So we did a sales summary of information that went from February of 2025 to February 28th of 2026. Did I just say that? I think I meant, well, you can read that. If that's not what I said, that's what I meant. And it's dealing with punch passes across all of the locations. Nelson and Salmo had the most complete data set. So what we did was change how we managed punch passes once they expired, to then make sure that any remaining punches on them are punched down, because then that actually takes that punch pass out of the system and allows somebody to buy a new one, or it just becomes this thing that is floating in the background of Explore that's not doing anything really. So Nelson and Salmo are very diligent in making sure that those are very effectively managed since that administrative change happened. Creston and Castlegar have caught up to that, but not in the same depth, in the same course of time that Nelson and Salmo did. So we're using some of the information from Nelson and Salmo as kind of like our data set information, but we've provided a whole bunch of other information related to what's going on in Castlegar and Creston, but we think it starts to paint a bit of a picture. So you can see that in Nelson, we sold 4,965 passes. So 62% of our business related to punch passes come from Nelson. And you can see the whole series of numbers of passes that are sold throughout the district, with a total of 8,247 passes sold. So that equates to, just to kind of put a figure in your head, to 82,470 general admissions sold to access services within a period of time. So in that time frame, we've had 981 of those passes expired with unused sessions. So almost 12% of our passes that are sold into that have expired where not all of those 10 passes were used. The total number of unused sessions equaled 7,014, equating to an approximate value, because these could be sold to adults, they could be sold to youth, and of course the fees change, so we've averaged this out. But the estimated total value of that is about $50,500 of service that people paid for that they didn't use. So for us, we started to then go, okay, well, how did this sort of break down? Like, where did this 12%-ish of unused passes come from? So this chart's trying to sort of show you, okay, in Nelson, it was 579 passes, in Salmo, it was 58, and then Castlegar and Creston combined were 344. But it starts to just give you some of this information to go, okay, well, what is this actually telling us? It also starts to tell us, well, what is the average number of unused sessions that were actually out there based on on, as passes expired, what does this equal? And so you can see that in Nelson, it actually equated to 5.3 sessions on average were unused. So of course, that's not meaning that every pass that expired, was that some might have been 1, some might have been 9, some might have been never used at all. And so it varies across the district. So we went through and said, okay, well, we want to figure out why this might be happening, like what is going on with underutilization and what might we be able to do to support people using their passes first. Before we did anything around even recommending any form of change, we said, well, what can we do to support making sure people know about their pass, making sure they know they have things that are coming up that are expiring and encouraging them to actually come and use the services that they paid for. So there's some causes that we think might be out there. So there could be just generally people thinking they're going to use something more frequently than they do and don't. There's all kinds of things that come up for people, like whether they've purchased it for seasonality reasons, they've moved and they just simply forget that they've had a pass and things just sort of come and go. We have people that are short-term visitors to the area. They might be here for the summer, or they might be here, might be here for a small period of time, and just simply that pass provided a level of convenience and they actually had no intention of using the whole thing. And maybe some of the things that we're most concerned about things are people aware that their pass expired? Do we have a process to help communicate to people to help them along the path of utilizing those services? Are probably the things that we are focusing on most. So some of the things that we're looking to do to help with kind of improving that uptake and use of things that people pay for is this communication process that could include everything from automated things that come out of our recreation software system. Sarah's doing some promotional work on helping remind people what these pass options are and how we can make sure that they're choosing the right one based on their needs. And certainly strengthening that point of contact that people have when they're making that purchase, that we're really selling and people understanding what that purchase is all about. So we're trying to do a lot of that educational work, because for us, it's important that we want people to use something they paid for and not see that to become a reason to potentially not come back to, like, oh, well, I never used it, so therefore I didn't, might not actually purchase another one. We'd like to potentially do a survey possibly this fall to sort of get some targeted follow-up and information on this, because we know that this is a well-loved pass. We know it is something that we think people purchase because it's convenient. It makes sure they don't have to bring their wallet with them every time. They can scan their pass and kind of keep going. But also, if we do ever want to really sink into moving our membership structure to a different model, this is a piece that we need to figure out an option from, if that continues to be a priority. So we're continuing to manage and monitor this. We'll continue to report back out, probably in sort of that rough year timeframe. So to try to measure the success of some of our efforts in helping people use their passes. And I really just walked through exactly the next steps. So I probably don't need to talk about that slide, but turn back to you.
Great. Any questions from the table? Not seeing anything. So thank you for that update. And I look forward to hearing where you land with it. Moving on to 7.4, regional parks information updates and planning. Who is taking that one?
Sure, I'll speak to that. Tricia, can you run the slide?
Oh, yeah.
Like
Sorry,
say
give me one second.
next or something like that. What's your keyword? What do you want?
31 seconds. It looks like it says you have it open though.
Oh, I'm gonna close it then. Thanks, Rick. Sorry,
Let me try that again.
never happens to me.
Okay, hold on. We'll find the video. Oh. Okay. Okay.
Can you go to the next slide, please?
Again.
Thanks. Through the chair, this presentation is in addition to the report and the agenda package that Tricia drafted for this committee. And first I want to acknowledge the work done by the staff to deliver the park services over the breadth of the RDCK number of parks, including the staff that are in the field and in the office and some that are in both. and the local people in all areas in the RD who work or volunteer to ensure that the parks are safe, functional, and as beautiful as they are. So this, first annual parks report is, I think this, we're calling it the first annual parks report. Meaning that more, in the future, is a highlight of some of the beneficial impacts these people have had in the form of acquisitions, development, improvement, and stewardship of parks in the RD. And it's, included, I think there's a handout, for the committee, but it's also located in a number of other areas. The report can be found online in various locations, including the website, linked on the socials, so Facebook and whatever other socials we use. I do that. Sarah does. And also in the RDCK newsletter and printed in printed form at the recreation facilities, so people can pick this up and take a look. And there may be a few minor typos. We'll fix those in future printed. So thanks for pointing that out. We know a Rosebud like it. How we're using this is to celebrate and draw attention to the work being done in parks, certainly. Also to, celebrate our parks, highlight the RDCK park system and what each park offers. And we're also using the map to support promotional efforts. I'll just get Sarah, maybe, what does that mean? How do we use the map to support the promotional efforts?
Well, we're finding that a lot of people know what our regional parks are or where they're located. So we're gonna use the map to kind of, help people understand where the parks are, what they're paying for, where they're located, where they can access them, all that good stuff. So we're also putting it up in our offices. We don't have that in our offices represented on where our parks are, so it's another step to try to identify and celebrate our parks that we have, because we have not done that very well in the past.
Thanks.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So we have there's a hope of the parks map, which is on the back page of back page of the report. One of the things that I know Tia's team is working on through the programming side is to highlight some of, figure out ways to promote parks in a different way. One of which is we don't have that large map anywhere in any of our major facilities. Or how do we bring some highlights to say, here's the best parks to go to in the spring to look at, I don't know, whatever it might be, birds, flowers, wildlife, whatever it might look like. Or figuring out ways to draw people and package our park system up and highlight some of the different things, even based on seasonality or awareness of things that people might be interested in doing at a particular time of year. So, but without the map, it's very hard for even facility staff to be able to promote or draw awareness to roughly where things are located and to see the breadth of the actual system that exists.
Next slide, please. Thank you. This presentation is also intended to inform the committee about how we're telling the story about our parks in the form of defining and prioritizing the work and creating work plans. The number of initiatives we have on the go at any one time is variable, and in most cases, it's flexible. Currently, there are 52 initiatives in our work plan, officially 52 initiatives in our staff work plan, including complex multi-year projects and smaller single-year projects. This includes planning and development initiatives and construction and ongoing improvements to our parks. But it does not include maintenance, repair, operations, or relationship management, which is always ongoing. Of note, only 8 of these initiatives are currently reported to the board through the quarterly reporting tool. And with regards to the map that Tricia just mentioned and that Sarah talked about how we're using it, you'll note that on this map, we talk about 27 regional parks. There's also 4 new parks identified with the orange circles that we're showing as newer or future parks, so currently under development, not fully built out. Next slide, please, Tricia. The next few slides show the way in which we're tracking these initiatives. So we built the list. So this is Microsoft Lists. Thank you for that. And people that are getting right into it, rolling up their sleeves and getting right into lists know how to use lists. I'm probably best to use it as a static, just look at it and don't touch it kind of thing, but people know how to manipulate this. And so you can actually use this tool to plug in your initiatives, determine the priority, determine what resources are needed or whatever criteria or parameters you want to put to those lists. And you can use that as a way of tracking our progress on these and even to determine priority, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. Just want to kind of skip through the next two, just kind of, yeah. And so, you know, this list, I believe, is almost in alphabetical order, but you'll notice how the categories are set up, with priorities, project details, and even timelines. And so that's what we're doing to track our metrics on these initiatives. And there's one more of these types of slides. Oh, sorry, moving ahead. So, but setting of the priority, as I mentioned, is sometimes a challenge. I know that locally, sometimes certain things come up that do get our attention and require our focus and our resources that may take away from others. And the list will help us to organize that, but it'll also help us to communicate to the committee and the commissions on what we're working on and what is priority. And so our plan from now forward, currently we're building and developing the annual parks report and building that into work plans. We will be through the spring enhancing promotion and awareness of the park system, and I'll let Sarah talk to that in a quick second. And we're developing a draft prioritization matrix, so that is gonna help us over the regional district determine which parks projects are a priority and do require the assistance and the work from people like Mark and Carrie and Sarah and Tricia and myself and Jeff to get those done in a timely fashion. And we will bring a report back to the All Recreation Committee to talk about how we're looking at prioritizing parks projects. And then we will maintain and share parks project initiative list for ongoing review. And that's an interesting one for me. So maybe Sarah, just want to talk about how we're gonna promote and bring awareness to the parks.
Currently, our programmer, Tyler, is doing a lot of work to include it in our program guides. Currently in all of our program guides, which go for every main facility, which would be Nelson, Calciar, Creston, and then Selma and Silicon Valley. We create seasonal program guides, and parks are never once mentioned in the guides. So Tyler is working with myself, park staff, to include that. I think the preliminary plan for our summer guide is to kind of just promote the parks in general. It also coincides with the release of June, which is Parks Month. So we'll be kind of tying that into that. And we also, I don't know if everybody knows, but we now have an Instagram page for Regional District. And parks kind of luckily go into that setting more than I would say potentially Facebook. They will be cross promoted between both, but we can use those socials to kind of highlight those activities more. And we have nice park pictures, so it goes well with Instagram. So those types of things.
Thanks, that's all I have, sure.
Great. We're moving on to the table. Director Cunningham, back to you for your question on this one.
Everything was fine with just the, it's already mentioned in detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Director Watson.
Yeah, I have two things. The first one is just super cool. This is nice. And I do follow us on Instagram. What I'm curious about is communications overall for us at the RD is kind of like as soon as you put our logo on it, it's like, oh, thank you, I don't want to see that. So it's really hard to get people to read the things we want them to read. This is a bit prettier because it's got pretty pictures of parks. What I'm curious about is the ability to do things on Instagram that are like reels where you're in the park and you're talking about what's happening. And so it's a much more like, that's actually the media that people are paying attention to. Like you're standing there like, oh, look, I'm going to go fishing or whatever it is. That's my first question is what kind of capacity do we have for things that are not written word as much as they are visually interesting without our logo? Yeah. Well, it kind of won't have our logo. It'll be in the top corner.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
I think it's a great question. I think capacity, Dan and I talk about it all the time on what is possible for us. Creating a video, going to locations takes away from doing other things. It's not something we shouldn't be doing. You're absolutely correct. It is where we want to go. It's just not where we have been. So it's for us trying to figure out how to balance our, in-office responsibilities towards us driving around, videoing things that, some taxpayers don't actually want to see, like it's trying to balance that aspect of it. For us, it probably is an easier thing to promote on Instagram because to your point, parks are pretty. Sometimes maybe looking at garbage isn't, but it could be also interesting to other people. So it's ongoing conversation that Dan and I are having of how we promote the regional district as a whole as something that people want to consume. It's hard, it's local government. Hard things to have people be really interested in, but to your point, it is something we discuss often and not sure we have the answer. But it is on our radar for sure.
Supplemental on a suggestion, and I have questions about the actual park report itself. Supplemental, that idea is give it to the residents for actually at the park, say, hey, like throw a contest together, like send us a video on what you've done, here's the criteria, tag us, and then you make them the ones being that are already in the field. There is a really good show on Shameless where they did an episode on how they got them to do that, and it was hilarious. Not that I'm promoting Shameless, because it's shameless, but then on the actual report itself, I had some questions around some of the things on Glacier Creek. Do you want those now or do you want those separately or?
Whatever, if they're technical, you can come to me if you separately if you want, I have no problems. If you wanna air it for everybody, I have no problem.
What's your preference, Chair?
It's your discretion of whether or not you think it is beneficial for all rec, or if you think it's more specific, or, I'll leave it up to you.
Well, I'll ask them now, because a few of them, they impact the overall budget in terms of what we might be doing with them. So I wanted to note a few things. One is I get the fuel treatment that was delayed. They changed the funding, that's fine. The emergency access route is a really, really critical piece. So
Sorry. I know, I'm trying to make sure that you're asking the right person.
Oh,
This is me.
okay.
But the prioritization kind of list situation might be operations.
Yeah.
Potentially
And that-
answer that better than I can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Sorry, was the question finished? I was,
Make sure you
yeah.
ask.
Because I was looking at you.
Yeah.
It's really not my department.
Yeah.
Okay, you're fine. So through the chair, I can't answer that question today. I do know that we've had conversations about that. It may be on the list. I'm sure it's on the list. I just don't know, Director Watson, where it fits in our work plan for this year, but we should bring it back to the Parks Commission and talk about it.
Well, I think what I'll do is I'll highlight that we have a shared services committee meeting coming up, and that's where we should talk the specifics. The other one that's on here is noting there's some license of agreement that expired in 2020. That park was built based on the conditions of the dam, so I would hope we're not being forced to reapply for things when we took it over on their behalf. So we can raise that at the shared services committee if that can be on the agenda, Chair, if you would, and then.
Email it, because I'm not.
Okay, no problems. Not to take up your time here. Great, okay. Director Lockwood.
Thank you. Through the chair, I love the idea that we're gonna actually start advertising our parks, because the Village of Salmo advertises the RDCK parks quite a bit on our stuff. But one thing I think that we're missing is if we're gonna do parks, we need to make sure trails are with it, because they are a part of our system, right? And we when we talk parks, people just think of a park, right? So that's the one thing, and including in the leisure guide is to make sure that we have parks and trails so we can link it. As always, I always encourage us municipalities is to put that link on our own websites, is to anything RD when it comes to recreation, because we are all part of one. I have a question about this. Now, might be my stupidity, but is Cottonwood Lake not in Area E?
I think that's
what recognized already had.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said Rosebud Lake.
Sorry, I said Rosebud Lake, he said Cottonwood Lake.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse anybody any further. We know where it is, though.
I thought you said Rosebud. Okay, thank you, because I'm like, have I had this messed up in my head for 8 years? And I was gonna say the same thing as Chair Watson as about the video challenge, is get the public to do a video challenge. Cause I like that idea.
Okay, Director.
All right, thank you through the chair. I really like that. I've got a question and then a comment or suggestion. is this publication for residents or is it for general public as well? Like, who could be visitors to our area?
Could be anybody,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
whoever wants to pick it up and look at it, it's for you.
all right. And then comes my suggestion based upon your answer is I think it might be useful to have a definition of what a multi-purpose park, a water, and what kind of things that a person could expect. If it's a visitor picking it up who might not know the area at all, if they went to this park,
Mhm.
what kind of activities could they participate in? Is it, I just think that might be helpful for someone who isn't familiar with our area at all.
Next park and trails report iteration.
Thank you.
What a quick one. Director Vandenberg. And I got you, Director Graham, next.
Great, thank you. So yes, I would agree that the Parks report is good. It's a good, useful tool. I will be sharing that with our tourism and our chamber group. My question is along the lines of, does this report then provide the context? I had reached out to ask what the context was going to be around the Parks, Trails, and Water Access Strategic Working Group work. And am I to assume then that this report should form a foundation of that upcoming? I haven't heard any discussion on that. Maybe that's my fault.
Yeah, through the chair, we do have a update on the Parks, Trails and Water Access Strategy. The working group met recently and we are going to be having a board workshop. So you should have received an email with a date. I believe it was not May the 4th be with you, it's May the 5th be with you. That will be the date that you've been invited to attend the workshop. At the workshop, we'll be reviewing a background report. That's the summary of engagement with the public, best practices, things like that. And then you'll be receiving a version of the strategy with recommendations. So these are the options the board will have of how to make improvements to the park system or advance initiatives within the strategy. So that will be, the first time you will have seen sort of a polished, it looks kind of like this, right? A polished version of all the work we've been doing. CJ Bly will be facilitating that workshop. He's our consultant that's been engaged on this project for a number of years now. It seems like we're getting there.
Supplemental then.
Yeah.
That's what I was at. I got the invitation, which prompted me to try to understand what is the context of this. You're saying that it's upcoming. We'll see it in advance or at the workshop?
I'll have to reread the email, but I believe it was sent out to you. I'll have to double check that. But if you'd like it in advance, that's definitely an option. If it's not
I
there.
will. Thank you very much.
Director Graham.
Thank you. So lots of great work here, good report, everything great. Just my question, I like this list. I've never seen this list before, or if I did, I missed it. I'm just wondering, to the staff, is this list going to be broken down now to the various committees, and is it coming to the committees at the committee levels?
I can try to take that. So through the chair, it's a great question. So where this started, Director Graham, was trying to capture for staff first all of the things that we actually have on the plate of parks, because parks is one of those topics that kind of rolls up into this regional service, but is talked about at all these different commissions. We were realizing that there isn't ever an opportunity to really talk about it as one whole service area. So the first attempt at that is today. That's exactly what you're seeing today. So the list that you're seeing in front of you and the one in the agenda would be call it the complete list, but it's literally the list that we created without actually having to think very hard. And we believe there's things missing on that list. is the first crack at that, and the staff version actually has multiple other columns within that list to help drive decisions and processes for us in managing those initiatives. I think over time, figuring out a way to bring in the kind of like to one of the items on the next steps piece about the prioritization and matrix for decision making. I'm sure for many of you, those words ring clear on a variety of commissions and committee work that you've done over time. But this group is no different, is trying to figure out what the best mechanism is to keep all of those projects aware of what they are, but how do we help inform where effort can be placed and why, to help guide then how that sits at those commission and committee levels. Figuring that system out is still a work in progress, because we're still trying to figure out the best communication system to help everybody understand what's actually happening in the bigger picture of parks, but still keeping those priorities of the commissions and committees alive and making sure we're aware as to, or do we have the priority right? Right now, even on that priority list, I would argue that we've done our best based on what we have information on today, but we could be wrong. We might not be correct that something we've identified as a high priority is actually high, or something that we put as a low priority, you're like, hold on a second, what does that mean? You're not paying any attention to that right now? Where in actual fact, that's all up for discussion. It's just figuring out, it's truly trying to figure out how to tell that story and bring all of the commissions and the limited resources we have in an alignment, so we're all working on things that we know where those priorities actually sit. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but.
Like supplemental, if I may.
Yep.
We do sort of a version of this at Rec 5, like at the end of the agendas, there's kind of an ongoing action list. So I could see something like this, like working like that. So I think there's a real value here in the work that you've done. And I think the priorities and the discussions need to be had at those committee levels. And that's where I would hope that this is ending up. But good work to get something into first draft. Thank you.
Great, so I don't see anyone else, so I'm gonna have a couple questions from me. So this project list, now is this an internal list, or is this something that directors have access to at any point in time?
It's through the chair, it's an internal.
Okay, that's very simple, I just was wanting to make sure. Parks Guide, if we can, I'm assuming it's already on your radar, making sure they get into our visitor information centers across the region. I think that's really wise to have a lot of visitors go there and pick that up. As far as like the Instagram videos, it's already been said about doing a public, going out to the public, but I just thought maybe an ambassador program too. They might have specific ones in each region that actually that come from that have really high followings that kind of do good content. And if you find a few, you might have an ambassador program where you're giving them like a 5-punch pass or something and they're doing all your video for that region. Like there might be a way to offload it from you that doesn't really cost us a lot, but being careful who's doing our content and finding that balance.
I've experienced previously, not in this role, but doing exactly that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Great, okay, so I know we only have 2 items left, but every time we think we can go through them quickly, we can't. So we're gonna take 10-minute break, and then we're gonna jump back into our last 2 items. So that is, we'll come back at 2:40, so 8 minutes.
Just
Just enough time, but
remember the
They're there.
But are they sitting?
Yeah.
That's right.
Unmuted. All right, everyone, is everyone there? Have change. Bring $5. We're gonna get back into our channel. Give everyone a few seconds to get back on. Okay. Okay, I see people coming back. All right. We are going to move over. Welcome back, everyone, to project overview. I believe this is Tia. Over to you.
To the chair. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. We've heard a lot of different projects happening within community services. I've got 3 more for you. These ones are projects that are more programming has a more heavy hand in them, so I'm going to be the one reporting on them today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each project. At the end of each project, maybe that would be a good time to ask questions if you're okay with that, with each project, and then we move on from there. So the first project we have is the Program Costing Analysis Project. You might have heard this come up in the fall at the ALREC meeting. I don't have a large update for you today, more on the sense of where we are as we're progressing steadily and on track as per the fall. So this was the program that the project that we are establishing a standardized method of program costing across all pre-registered programs that we offer. We had a previous model that we're still currently using where almost all of our program prices were consistent across the RDCK. But with this project, we've been able to be more precise in understanding not only the direct costs, but also the indirect costs of providing a program. All of the other people that are within community services that have a hand in helping programs be what they are, making sure that we accounted for them in a way that had rationale and that was meaningful. Joe had done a lot of work in 2025 that allowed us to identify a more accurate number as to how we attach those to our program pricing. So we were able to confirm back in the fall that we are going to be able to stay within budget, as well as assign the correct percentage of cost recovery based off the fees and charges policy. So, like I said, the project is moving steadily. We are currently on the brink of developing some training materials and support resources for staff, namely programming staff, to be able to work within the new model. At the June ALREC meeting, I will be communicating a framework so that you have a better understanding of how we program costs and our pricing rationale, so that it is, right now it just seems enigmatic. It seems like, oh, we charge this and you don't really understand how or why we do it. So this is why in June, we're going to come back to you with a little bit more of an update as to how the new model is going to work for us. We're also still on track to implement our small fee adjustments for 2027. So based off the new costing model, there's going to be, we're off a little bit on what we're costing. So you're going to see that there's probably going to be some program prices that stay the same. Some might increase, some might decrease. But any of those that are done that have larger amounts that have to be adjusted will be done so incrementally over time, so that we do manage to stay within budget. So that's kind of our first and foremost desires to want to be able to stay within budget as we make some of these small changes. So that's the program costing analysis project, if anyone has any questions.
Questions, Brendan? I am not seeing any. You can move on.
Fabulous. Moving on. The funded training program. It's not necessarily a project, but a quick background on here. Our ongoing funded training program is one that supports aquatic and fitness training and staffing and allows us to staff across the region by subsidizing training for eligible candidates. So the intent here is to help address immediate staffing needs and support our succession planning needs as well. In fall 2025, we did make an adjustment to the program with I mean, with any regionalized program, communication and clarity are very important, so everyone knows their role to help. So we did improve some clarity and consistency. We, amongst the internal processes, we also strengthened the candidate selection by refining eligibility criteria. We have some tables here that I'll be getting into to help you understand them a little bit better. So in aquatics, you will see that in 2024, we had a sizable amount of applicants looking to want funded training. Back in 2024, our eligibility criteria was a lot looser, but even with the loose criteria that we had, we were still only able to fund 36% of the people. And of the 36 that were funded, only 15 were hired. And I will also add that a few of those who started training in 2024 were only just hired in 2026. So some people did take a really long time to get through their training, whether it's because they were working on the side, whether it's, they had school or any of those things. Some of the denied applicants were either too young, so they were applying, at 15 years old before they were even eligible to even take the courses, or they didn't plan on staying in the regional district for longer than 2 years, or had too low of an availability that they declared to us to even make them a worthwhile hire to even want to fund, because they would let us know that they're just, available for like 4 hours a week or 5 hours a week or something, which was not of much use for us. So if you look into 2025, you're going to see that we saw a drastic decrease in the number of applicants. We went from 101 applicants down to 53 applicants for 2025. And we were already on a path of wanting to change our structure in 2025 a bit, but we were still using some of the same eligibility criteria as 2024, and we had that much less total applicants. And so for over half the year, we only managed to fund 8 participants. And of those 8, we hired 3 to date. But notice that, because it took some 2 years to get their certification and to get hired, we're still starting to see people that are still going on their training journey. So those 8 might be a larger number by the end of this year. We'll have to see. But it's important to note that when we made these changes to the new eligibility criteria in the fall, it didn't reduce the fact that we are seeing less applicants. We're still seeing applicants. I will be able to give you some more numbers in June if that's something that you'd like to see, or wait until next fall so we have a little bit more of 2026 that we can provide for you. But that's the aquatic portion of it. In fitness, the model that was used until this fall was a reimbursement process upon hire. So people, once they went through the training, and if we hired them, then we would reimburse them for any of the training that they took to become an instructor. But as you can see, even then, there was still a very, very low rate of people who actually finish, apply, and actually are a right fit to become a fitness instructor with the RDCK. So since our fall restructure, any certification courses that are offered through the RDCK are up for funding up front. So they can apply for funding up front. But we hit a recent snag in that our primary contract instructor that we use to help certify people has recently moved. And finding or even training individuals qualified to certify individuals in fitness is actually a real challenge, as you can see by the number of people hired in the last little bit. I will say, though, there are a few people that we have hired within our organization that we have been able to train. So it's not that we've only hired 3 people in the entire regional district over the past 2 years. It's that some people who have already worked for us decided that they wanted to become an instructor. We help support that. We help support them do that, but that's outside of the funded training program. Okay, so staff is working on solutions for the current instructional gap that we are seeing right now. So as we move forward within the funded training program in general, we want to increase our continue to increase our exposure. We have staff going into high schools and doing presentations for recruitment and sharing career paths, which is set to happen in the next month, couple weeks. And we also have had presentations to select groups in the community, not only about just our services in general, but even sharing some of the ways that you can become an employee if interested, as well as continued advertisements that have been happening with the program. Any questions about the funded training program?
I'm not seeing any here. And Director Graham, you said you got your question answered. Oh, yeah, Director Papa?
Yeah, to the chair, like your applicants, what is sort of the age group, starting from, you mentioned 15 years old to 40 or 30 or 20 or whatever? What is the age group of the applicants, just for curiosity purposes?
Through the chair, yeah. 16 is when you're eligible to take our lifeguarding courses in order to become a lifeguard. So it's 16. So people are applying when they're 15. And by the time they go through the whole journey, they won't yet have been 16. So usually we ask for them to wait to apply until they're 16 to do so. And, honestly, there is no age limit. We're not limiting the funded training to people like under 60. If there are people who are wanting to pursue work in our facilities, certainly we're looking for daytime staff. So people in their 60s who are wanting to lifeguard and roam on deck, if they're very much an applicant, just the same as a 16-year-old.
Is it supplemental? Are you getting any applicants that are already trained that just are, let's say if they're moving in from Alberta and they move to Castlegar and apply for a job, but they've already been a lifeguard or whatever? Are you getting any applications like that at all?
Yeah, through the chair, we do have people that move from other communities, but they don't utilize our funded training program. I mean, Craig actually might have a little bit more of a sense of it, but I do know there are people from time to time who move communities for sure.
Through the chair, we do see the odd out of province applicant who has qualifications through their governing body, and we sometimes have to run them through a research. I think Director Vandenberg said he was a lifeguard at one point, but we offered him a position and he had other stuff to do. But that does happen from time to time. We get lucky and we get somebody that's already certified and they apply. But I think to Tia's point, we're trying our best to fill those niche market, with the niche market, certainly in Castlegar right now, we're looking for daytime lifeguards. And so we're just trying to fit those opportunities where we need them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's one more question. Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to add on to Craig, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Through the chair, you will also see a lot of applicants that are 16-year-olds that do apply, but depending on the community that they're in, we have an overabundance of enough staff that are of the teenage age, and so we're looking more for really trying to fill the availability of the areas that we struggle to fill, like our daytime staff.
Director Lockwood.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just wondering, something that I brought to our commission meeting is about hiring or funding somebody to get their lifeguarding, and they actually don't get the money back until they actually give back some hours. But what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm not understanding this, is that we actually funded 36 people and 21 of them never got hired, and so they got this education and the taxpayer paid for it and they walked away. Is that correct? Is that what I'm understanding?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so
Through the
that's
chair,
program's not.
I can elaborate on that. So that initially when the Get Funded was initiated several years ago, I call it 3 years ago or more. That was where we were at the time, where we were so short-staffed, especially in aquatic, but also in fitness, where this committee and the various rec commissions and committees made the decision to fund training, subsidized training, regardless of the output and the outcomes. And I think that Tia's done a good job to report on the progress that's made. But I think through tighter controls since, we've been able to direct the funding where there's benefit to it. And I think that's where we're getting to with the evolution of this. Initially, it was where we were funding as many people as possible to make sure that we could keep our facilities open. Now we're starting to see that there's an opportunity to be more deliberate in that. Certainly with fitness, you have to work to be reimbursed for the program. And aquatics, it was, we will pay for you if you qualify for this, to a level that we also had inside of the structure of the program. There would have been, say, for 12 candidates, 6 would have had to been paying and 6 would have been subsidized so that we recovered our costs. So it wasn't where we were paying for 12 people from start to finish and then one would apply and be hired. It was, we were doing our best to balance that.
Okay, thank you.
And through the
Okay,
chair,
thank you. Yeah.
I will add also that the people, there are a large amount of people who don't apply for the funding and just take the program because they can afford it. So we do have our costs recovered as per budget.
Okay, over to you for the last part.
Okay. The last part is the allocation review project. This one has been ongoing, but I have more to update you on today, so that's great. So the allocation review project is focused on making improvements to how our allocation policy is implemented in practice. So our intent obviously was to strengthen our clarity, our efficiency, our equity in the allocation of high demand and shared facilities, namely around arenas and pools. So we've made progress since I last reported on this in June of 2025. And some of the areas that we've started to make some headway and where we're going with this project is we've made an update to the allocation timeline. So back in January, early February, we reached out to the user groups with an updated allocation timeline. And what I mean by allocation timeline is, when people have to submit their requests, the timeline of, when schedules are confirmed, drafts, meetings are had, when people have to sign their contracts, when they have to get them in by before the season starts. That whole timeline was not agreeable by all of the user groups. And so we went back to the table and said, okay, what's going to work? So we sent out in January this new timeline, and majority of the user groups, almost all of them basically, have confirmed that it aligns well with their seasonal planning. It doesn't create conflicts with their existing schedules. And so we are moving forward with that, with the allocation review project sorry, lost my space here. We're moving ahead with this to implement this into the 2027 season. So what we would like to do is fall is when we've got a lot of the timelines starting for some of the January through March seasons that start. So that's when we will be implementing some of these new timelines with these user groups. So we wanted to give them enough time to be prepared for the new time. The second piece of it is we're providing an allocation request form. Currently, what happens is we have all these groups email their requests in, and they come in all different ways and shapes and forms, and our staff has to make heads or tails of it because everyone offers it in different ways, and sometimes we miss key components of their annual schedules that we need. And so what we've done is we've created this new form that groups can fill out, that they can share what their weekly recurring schedules look like, any known events that they have in future seasons, because sometimes if they're like really special events, we want to know almost a year in advance that they're going to want to have these events and blacked out in the facility. Any anticipated cancellations that might happen, alternate schedules that occur during school breaks like winter break and spring break, any seasonal volume shifts. So that's, early fall has less busy ice than, after Thanksgiving, when some of the groups really get steam and move forward with a larger volume of schedule. Spring usage changes in the pool happen where, you know, our RDCK programs seasons look different than swim seasons, where they go from a winter schedule to a summer schedule, and it doesn't all happen at the same time. So we want to make sure that we're capturing certain months that might look different than regular weekly months throughout the year. And obviously this hopefully will help improve our planning accuracy and reduce those last minute adjustments, which we typically see. And then spaces become unutilized because of these last minute cancellations that we're not able to fill. And the third piece is the update of our allocation procedures. So these would include those updated timelines that we have just confirmed, any new and clarified definitions that we need to be on the same page with the groups, any conflict resolution practices that we need to update and refine, and clear expectations for both user groups and staff, and so everyone understands what everyone's role is. And we're looking at new bookable spaces like our dry arena floors. We didn't really have an allocation timeline associated with that, so now we'd like to introduce that for the 2027 season, as well as adding the Creston Education Center and the outdoor courts in the community park to be potentially on an allocation schedule, depending on what kind of demand we see. So all in all, we were trying to identify these gaps that had currently existed with our current structure to be more transparent, more reliable. Everyone understood them better. Yeah. Oh, sorry. The last piece was the minimum public pool space commitments. And that was making sure that we have equitable public access while maintaining an appropriate balance with our user group needs. Right now, we can't commit to certain lane space during public times when we have other groups in the pool. And so we wanted to come back to the committee in June to talk about a recommendation we'd like to see as far as minimum public pool space commitments, whether that's across the board during the day or whether there's different times of the day, peak times that there's less or more. We will come to you with a recommendation.
Great. I am not seeing any questions. So if you are done, thank you very much, Pierre.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great work. Okay, and we're last but not least, 7.6, the KIJH something. L, right? Is that what it is? Okay, did I get it right?
Yeah.
Over to you, Craig.
Thanks through the chair. Staff have been made aware of a change to the structure and the organization of the Kootenay International Junior Hockey League, and it wasn't from the KIJHL we received this. They're actually being very quiet on this. So two of the franchises that operate, and that's not a statement or a comment, that's just the actual fact that they haven't put anything out about it, but two of the franchises that operate in the RDCK, the Castlegar Rebels and the Creston Valley Thunder, used to be called the Thunder, that's now called the Thunder, have now become part of a new league called the Western International Junior Hockey League with 6 other franchises, and that does not include the Nelson Leafs. It's unclear if this league is Junior A or Junior B, but according to their media release, the new league will operate outside of Hockey Canada. I'm not sure what that means. We're not sure what that means, except that it may be a way for this new league to recruit players from outside of BC, Alberta, etc. And the Nelson Leafs are not part of that new league, and they are, as of a message I got from their president today, they are remaining a member of the KIJHL. And so there's still some more messaging to come out. I will tell the committee that I had a conversation with the commissioner, Jeff Dubois of the KIJHL, that said that they're having a board of governors meeting. It didn't indicate that anything like this was happening because my question was about Junior A versus Junior B and the tiering system within the league. So assume that this is a bit of a situation that's just come to light with kind of shock effect. And it's not clear if this new league is in cooperation or in competition with the KIJHL. So we're not sure if they're affiliated or not. We will probably find out in certainty. So this is important to this committee and to the RDCK board because the 3 organizations have had long-term agreements for use of RDCK facilities, And all three of those agreements have either expired just recently or will expire later this spring. So we intend to come back to the committee and the rec commissions and the Accessibility Services Committee with recommendations for how to align the terms of these agreements. Now, this will complicate that. As a reminder, the three franchises came to this committee last June to describe their needs for future league alignment. And so obviously those plans haven't come to fruition, and they had described what they needed to support them in their endeavors to become junior A, various franchises. And after that, we had, and forgive the pun, on the fly concessions made to those groups for additional advertising opportunities within the facilities and including on-site branding and signage. So that was all done transparently at the commission level and promoted through to the board. And so that we've done that, but and staff have discussed with this committee, how do we intend to approach these groups to align the terms and considerations. So as Director Jackman pointed out in fees and charges, there are 3 different ways that we apply representative game fees. And so we were looking at making those all similar, if not exactly the same. There are other concessions and considerations that the groups get. For example, in Crescent and Castlegar, the groups get access to the pool and the fitness facility, where in Nelson they have to pay for it. And so there's things like that we were trying to align. So we had, as of last week, invited all 3 franchises to a meeting to sit down to discuss the terms of those agreements, not knowing that this was happening. And so that meeting has been thrown into a bit of a situation. And in fact, the Nelson Leafs have asked that they not attend that conversation. We deal with them independently. So what this could mean is we're not sure if one or both leagues have more or less demand for our facilities, have increased or decreased requests for advertising and business assistance and support from the taxpayers. So we will come back to the committee in June and the local rec commissions and Press Valley Services Committee as required to inform them of the implications that this may have on our business.
Okay, questions from the table? Anyone? Yeah, Dr. Woodruff?
Thank you. So the 2 leagues, this new league, is that like a funding body for these groups? And the other league that the Nelson Leafs are part of, is that also a funding body? Like, what is the?
Oh, so yeah, through the chair, these are independent franchises. They're not a business, they're not a conglomeration. They're not a league that I don't think shares revenue. I would say that they're independently in it. You know, it's really interesting conversation, because if they are a league that shares revenue, there is private interest, there are private ownerships, and so then essentially the taxpayers in the RDCK could be funding private enterprise indirectly. So as far as I know, and you know, just to, you know, put a point on it, I did ask the franchises several months ago for some financial information, and being that they're all not-for-profits, they're being very guarded with that. So we will try to sense, and you know, we do see the benefit of them at least sharing the strength of their financial situation with the board to let them know where the financial system is actually warranted, but we'll try to sense that. But it's a really good question, because we don't know the structure of the league, if it's if it's a for-profit league or if it's got commercial enterprise involved, then our taxpayers would be supporting commercial enterprise.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Question on contracts. So are the contracts with the individual nonprofit like teams, or is it with the like the governing body, the K?
Yeah, through the chair, the agreements that we have are with the not-for-profits. So the Crescent Valley Junior Hockey Society, for example, is a not-for-profit. The Nelson Leafs, I believe they're called the Nelson Leafs Hockey Society, or they are not-for-profit. So that's what our agreements are with, regardless of the name of the franchise or the team. That's who we do business with.
Okay. Just wondering the legalities, if they are not a part in our actual contracts with the bigger league and not necessarily the individuals. That's why I was curious.
Yeah, no, we have no, and the league has no, I would say the influence on the individual. They have no influence on our negotiations with those groups.
Great. Any other questions from anyone? Not seeing any, then I will thank you for that update, and we'll see where it goes. Call for public time. I do see that there is public on the line. This would be your time to unmute and ask questions if you have any for us about recreation.
Ask again, do you have any questions for us? Okay, not seeing any. Okay, call for adjournment. Great, everyone in favor? Excellent, so let's move on. Have a good day, everyone. See you later.